Ajuste agora as cores e o som do seu equipamento.
Photographers try to tell the story in a very immediate, powerful, provocative way.
What I'm doing is studying that subject's movements, their personality, their depth, their gestures.
Working for Geographic is the best job in the whole world. It's also the hardest job in the whole world.
The intensity you have to live with the photography. Most people aren't willing to pay the price.
You're a little bit like a Texas Ranger. You're out there by yourself, on your own frequently, just doing your thing.
It's just a little moment at a time, and you capture it in the box, and then you put it on the page.
Once it's there, you've captured something that possibly could never be captured again.
Os fotógrafos. Um especial da National Geographic. Produzido pela National Geographic Society.
Everybody says that I have the best job in the whole world, and it's you know, I think really for the most part they're right.
Jodie Cobb é uma fotógrafa da National Geographic cobrindo uma viagem através da Europa no lendário Expresso do Oriente. Para Cobb, é apenas outro capítulo em uma carreira que a levou a lugares sobre os quais a maioria de nós apenas leu a respeito.
Thank you. Mesdames et messieurs, bonjour et bienvenue à bord du Venise Saint-Laurent Express.
You're really your own personality. You're a one-man band. You figure out where you're going to go, what you're going to photograph, who you want to see, what you want to see in this country or this place, how you want to tell this story.
Cobb levará apenas alguns dias para contar a história desta viagem, mas alguns trabalhos podem durar meses, normalmente em lugares menos luxuosos. Juntos, os fotógrafos da National Geographic cobrem aproximadamente 150 histórias todos os anos, viajando mais de 1.600.000 quilômetros. Em um dia qualquer, pode haver uma dúzia deles em campo, em países diferentes, buscando elementos incomuns, momentos inesperados e imagens memoráveis. Não é um trabalho fácil. Os fotógrafos da National Geographic precisam tentar colocar o mundo e tudo o que há nele nas páginas de uma revista. Desde as primeiras edições, há mais de um século, a revista National Geographic levou o mundo a seus leitores não apenas com palavras, mas com fotos. Fotos de descobertas e exploração, de vida e terras selvagens, de pessoas em suas roupas típicas ou sem roupas. As fotografias sempre foram populares entre os leitores. Em 1908, ocupavam mais da metade das páginas da revista. O editor pioneiro Gilbert Grosvenor dizia que a mente precisa ver para crer. Na década de 20, a Geographic enviava seus fotógrafos pelo mundo todo. Às vezes, arriscavam suas vidas para documentar culturas e costumes em lugares longínquos. Esta era, em qualquer circunstância, uma das profissões mais glamurosas do mundo. Como será agora, meio século depois? A imagem do fotógrafo da National Geographic é tão romântica hoje quanto sempre foi. Ainda parece o trabalho dos sonhos, mas o que a realidade tem a ver com o sonho?
The reality of what you get up and do every day till you go to bed that night is far different from the perception of it.
Traveling to distant locations, taking a lot of bags, going through customs, getting sick, getting well, hoping, praying.
It's miserable conditions or horrible hotel rooms.
Worrying about the expenses, worrying about the weather.
You spend much time arranging and gaining permissions and authorizations and very, very little time shooting.
It's loneliness and fatigue, and it's assistants who won't show up, and it's helicopters that develop engine trouble.
The plane I was flying in crashed into a lake.
It's a bit insane. It's totally abnormal.
It's diseases.
I've had malaria 12 times.
Broken my back, had malaria, been seasick.
They broke into my hotel room at 2 o'clock in the morning and robbed me at gunpoint.
And it's, you know, all those things. It's, God, maybe even the troubles are more glamorous.
Às vezes, os problemas em campo podem se tornar uma vantagem. Jim Stanfield estava cobrindo a reconstituição de um voo histórico da Inglaterra para a Austrália em uma réplica de um biplano da Primeira Guerra Mundial. No 29º dia do voo, sobre a ilha de Sumatra, veio o desastre. Uma falha no motor obrigou o pouso forçado. Stanfield e a tripulação escaparam por pouco da morte, mas ele mal se apercebeu do perigo. Estava ocupado demais tirando fotos.
I certainly didn't expect to go down in a rice paddy, but it led to a portfolio of photographs that we certainly did not expect. You're working a little bit in shock, you're working a little bit on automatic pilot. I found photographs in that coverage that I didn't remember photographing, even some of the people. So here was a situation that it was a misfortune to the project, it was disconcerting to the pilots, but it did work for me.
Nick Nichols é especializado em fotos de aventuras e da vida selvagem e está acostumado com adversidades no trabalho. Mas mesmo Nichols não estava preparado para os 7 meses exaustivos que ele e sua equipe passariam a trabalho na floresta tropical de Nedok, na África Central.
Indoki is the first time I've ever been to an intact ecosystem. When you get into the Indoki, you realize that you're definitely the outsider, that the creatures there are in control. It's just a place for animals and not for humans. The toughest part of my job is oftentimes not taking photographs, but surviving in the environment where I've gone to photograph. The intensity you have to live with the photography. Most people aren't willing to pay the price. I mean, I teach workshops, so I see students all the time, and they really think, wow, you get to wander around the world and take pictures. I say, no, 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 I work. There's a difference in capturing your subject and putting it where you want and having it stand there. the subject is really in control. You're just trying to capture a moment with that subject.
Capturar momento pode ser negócio arriscado, especialmente se o seu elemento for elefante mal-humorado.
I mean, I'm standing in a stream. The elephant's running straight toward me. Really what I'm thinking about is when to run. And so I push the button at the last possible moment, and then I start running. And think, well, I wonder if I got it. I wonder if it's in focus. I wonder if it's properly exposed. And then when you see it, it's just a roaring moment. Field work is more than some people can do. You know, it's 18-hour days. You don't eat. You don't, and you're away from your family. I mean, we lived in a forest that's got probably the most insects on the planet in it. And not only do they give you disease, they sort of drive you crazy with biting you all the time, or in your ears, or in your eyes. And there were worms that would get into our feet, and they're called footworms, but I ended up with about 100 of them on my buttocks, which was kind of embarrassing. It's not a cushy job.
It didn't load. What? It didn't load. It didn't? No. Okay.
A despeito das dificuldades, mesmo num lugar como Nedok, Nick Nichols consegue registrar imagens de beleza clássica, com características únicas. Suas fotografias ousadas e inventivas estão mudando a forma de vermos a vida selvagem.
The way I look at natural history is so different than the way it's been looked at in the past. The static nature of photography doesn't do it for me because the world's moving. And I'm very much a product of the 60s and popular culture, so I see with bright colors, and I see with a little flash on the camera, and the edges that the movement creates.
Os fotógrafos da National Geographic são livres para seguir seus estilos próprios e seus trabalhos muitas vezes fogem do tradicional, chegando a ser surpreendentes. Eles não são apenas jornalistas, são artistas, criando retratos que fascinam tanto quanto informam. William Allard é fotógrafo veterano da Geographic, que há muito tempo é reconhecido pelo estilo singular de suas fotos. Como Nichols, Allard explora sua capacidade aos limites técnicos, frequentemente fotografando com pouca luz ou em lugares inesperados. Seu estilo e sua escolha de elementos desafiam as convenções.
With me, I think it's a certain kind of palette, a certain kind of light. I love working in limited lighting conditions. I think they're in photography as in painting. It gives you a certain kind of spatial thing you work with. And that's why I don't think, I don't think you look at my photographs and say those are snapshots. You can't make a snapshot at a half a second. I'm not a motion picture person. I'm not a cinematographer. I don't have the element of motion. I don't have sound. So I have to evoke the feeling of movement, perhaps, or the feeling of song. It's trying to put something into that one single image that will evoke the feeling you might get by looking at a sequence of images that tell you about a thing or an event or a place.
A revista National Geographic publica mais de 1000 fotos todos os anos. E quer tenham estilo tradicional ou de vanguarda, todas devem ter o mesmo alto padrão. Então, o que faz uma grande fotografia? Pergunte isso aos próprios fotógrafos.
I'd like to think that an ideal National Geographic photograph is one that is clear and sharp and abides by the The basic rules of what is a good photograph: that you have a strong center of interest, that it is sharp, and that the composition is good.
For me, a great photograph is one that really says something, but is also packaged well, has a nice content, good design, and it says something about life, says something about the human condition, says something about the planet.
Because Geographic has faith in their photographers, they give them the time in the field to do deep, thorough, intimate coverages that are comprehensive. And without intimacy, you cannot get the kind of photographs that readers of the Geographic are used to. Close, personal, powerful photographs.
Really nice. Way to go. That's it. That's it. That's the stuff.
Jim Stanfield cobriu mais de 50 histórias para a National Geographic durante sua longa carreira e foi recompensado em sua profissão. Foi eleito 4 vezes o fotógrafo de revista do ano. Uma das especialidades de Stanfield é a cobertura histórica, evocando a vida de uma era perdida, como o monarca otomano do século XVI, Salomão, o Magnífico. Em um mercado popular da Turquia, ele procurou pessoas que, de alguma forma, pudessem personificar o povo da época de Salomão. Stanfield olha os rostos do presente para capturar a personalidade do passado.
There are probably 5 or 6 great faces in this market. But I probably burn 2 rolls totally on this lady because I believe she has the fiber that I was looking for. She had the strength in her face and body that makes up the personality of what people may have been 400 years ago. And I was just waiting for an expression. What I needed was a smile or a giggle from her that might set her apart.
Stanfield investe tempo e energia consideráveis em seu trabalho de campo, mas ele traz mais que fotografias.
How have you been? Working hard. Good. These are some of the rewards that people don't realize. It's not only being reproduced in the magazine, but it's some of the personal contact and it's some of the friendships.
Cheap at twice the price.
It can be a very lonely life working for the National Geographic and being away 8 to 9 months out of the year. But if you meet a few people like this, it certainly recharges the batteries.
Boa parte do tempo do fotógrafo é gasto procurando o elemento correto para fotografar. Mas ele também precisa de um talento especial para forjar um contato pessoal, um vínculo de confiança.
Her first name is Fatma. She took a liking to me in Suud during the celebration of the nomads. She has cattle or she has goats and cattle. The most difficult part for a photojournalist is weaving him or herself into the lives of the subject and putting the subject at ease. Even though you don't speak the language, I think that they see an awful lot in your eyes. I don't think it takes very long for them to realize that I'm very serious about my work I'm trying to do the very best for myself and for the subject, and I think they get a big kick out of it.
The human face speaks to people. It did to me when I was a young man and wanted to be a photographer. Portraits were the most moving thing. I think they continue to be the most moving part of photography.
Sometimes there's an absolute immediate emotional thing that happens when you see somebody that you know, A, going to be a wonderful photograph, but B, there's something about them that makes them a wonderful photograph, and that's usually something internal with them, not just the way they look, but their way of relating to the world, of responding to the world, of responding to me as a photographer. And it's a spark of life in their eyes, like the child in the Vietnamese refugee camp, whose eyes and my camera locked at that moment, and there was sort of that spark of recognition, that spark of communication or something between us.
Quando Luma 70 cobriu uma história perto do Monte Vesúvio, ele não tinha rostos para responder à sua câmera, nem personagens com quem se relacionar. A antiga cidade romana de Herculano foi enterrada em uma erupção vulcânica e não havia nenhum sinal de seus moradores. Por muito tempo, se acreditou que eles haviam escapado, até que os arqueólogos finalmente descobriram a terrível verdade. Numa noite de verão de 79 d.C., uma avalanche vulcânica caiu sobre Herculano. Seus habitantes, aterrorizados, morreram ao tentar escapar. Aproximadamente 2.000 anos depois, os restos de 150 deles foram descobertos em uma antiga praia, e a National Geographic enviou massa atenta para documentar a descoberta. Agora que as vítimas haviam sido achadas, sua câmera seria testemunha da grande tragédia.
It's really like walking on glass.
I consider this the most important assignment I've ever had, because you're dealing with history that's just being brought to light at this very moment in time. And, you know, it's me that's here to record it. I think the moment I opened that door of that chamber the first time and walked in, and the light was still rather dark and my eyes had to adjust, and I saw slowly these skeletons all laying on the floor. And then as I looked closer, you could see people hugging each other, and you realized that this was the way they died, that they were just frozen in time at the moment of their death. And it was very, very emotional at first.
Luma 70 passaria 4 meses completando seu trabalho, mas fotografar é apenas um passo para se criar um artigo para a revista. Na sede da National Geographic em Washington, o fotógrafo se depara com um desafio diferente. Trabalhando com um editor de fotografia, ele precisa rever as centenas de rolos de filmes tirados em campo. De milhares de imagens individuais, apenas algumas dúzias serão separadas para a seleção do que será publicado. Além do repórter e do fotógrafo, a equipe da Geographic inclui editores, artistas, cartógrafos, técnicos em computadores, todos trabalhando para dar cor, detalhes e vida à história. Passa-se um ano ou mais do momento em que o fotógrafo tira suas primeiras fotos até que a revista terminada seja impressa. E na capa desta edição, o retrato de Luma 70 de um mundo perdido.
The cover is the crowning glory. It's the jewel in the crown. I think it makes all of your efforts complete.
To have the cover means kind of that you own the issue. I can see that issue from across the room, and I know it's mine. My story's in there.
I think it was chosen as a cover because it's a natural cover. It's a simple photograph. Because of the flag is in the picture, the stance of the ball player. I think also even the fact he's wearing numeral 1, number 1. I mean, all these things kind of fall into place, and the light was gorgeous on that South Texas afternoon. That picture is a result of simply showing up for work on time. I got there, they played the national anthem, the light was very nice. Not a difficult picture to make.
The writer and I were lost in Dublin, overdue for an appointment in a remote suburb, and were really racing around Ireland looking for the right road. And we passed these 4 children with their horse. They were walking in front of a great stone wall, and they had this pony, and the light was gentle and graceful. Someone saw them, who knew them, honked the horn, and they all looked. They looked off camera, the wind blew, and I took the photograph. 1 frame, 1 moment, and it catches them unaware. And that's the power of the photograph.
A lot of times you know it instantly. You know at the very minute that you click the shutter that the picture is there. A lot of other times it's a surprise on the film when you get home. For example, the picture of the women here at the swings and the Saudi women cover. I didn't really realize at the time that was going to be as compelling a picture as it was. You know, I saw the light and the movement and the shapes, but I didn't realize how the way her hip line goes would be quite so seductive, and to work with the expression in her eyes, and that the kid on the swing would be going right at the moment that it was. Those things you don't know. You hope for the best.
I think a cover needs to be simple, direct, and it has to reach out and grab the reader. This picture was chosen for the cover because it kind of summed up the whole plight of the Afghan people of this time. I mean, there was a very small country. They were invaded by a superpower. Since I made the photograph back in 1984, I don't think a week has gone by in the last 11 years that I haven't gotten a letter or a telephone call asking about her, wanting a print, or wanting to send money to her. The attraction of why people are drawn to that picture is the look in her eyes. The haunted look is perhaps what is kind of riveting or captivating.
A fotografia da vida selvagem é praticamente uma marca registrada da National Geographic. Capturar imagens de animais em seu habitat natural é uma exigente especialidade, mas os resultados podem entreter, informar e inspirar. Desde os primeiros dias da revista, as fotografias de animais estavam entre as favoritas dos leitores, e os fotógrafos da Geographic foram pioneiros. Em seus trabalhos ao redor do mundo, registraram extraordinárias imagens de animais familiares ou exóticas. Mas, com a redução de lugares selvagens não explorados, uma nova fronteira se abriu. Com o desenvolvimento do equipamento submarino na década de 40, pela primeira vez o homem pôde explorar e fotografar o mundo escondido sob o mar. Um dos pioneiros foi o fotógrafo da National Geographic, Louis Martin. Na primeira cobertura submarina em grande escala, suas fotos mostraram uma surpreendente visão das criaturas das profundezas. O trabalho de Marden inspirou a geração seguinte de fotógrafos submarinos. David Dubillet é um dos melhores. Em 25 anos de trabalho para a Geographic, Dubillet fez mais de 30 artigos. Seu trabalho o mantém em campo a maior parte do tempo.
I really would like to have a regular life. If I could, I'd like to live in New York, take the elevator downstairs, and swim out into the street and take pictures. Home for dinner every night. Can't do it. I have to go to the ends of the earth, and then when I go to the ends of the earth, then I have to go underwater. I never go in the water without a camera. I can barely take a bath without a camera. I might miss something. I figure I've been underwater now 100 days a year since I've been 12 for 3 hours a day. I don't know what that adds up to, but it's a lot of time. Underwater is half shooting pictures and thinking about pictures. The other half is hunting, finding the stuff. It's a little bit like trail craft, you know, walking through the woods. What's that? What's that sound? What's that thing? Why are these fish doing that? And after a while, you begin to learn how the sea works, and it's a very complex, very little understood place. And you've got to find things.
A fotografia submarina, como qualquer outra coisa sob a água, requer treinamento especial e um equipamento sofisticado.
I knew a guy, he's a French photographer. And he turns to me, you know, smoking a big, thick glow on. He says, David, you know, I'm interested only in the image. I am not interested in the equipment of the photography. And I always said to myself, that's a bunch of bull. It's unbelievable. Of course, photography is about seeing. And to see pictures, you need to have equipment. And the equipment not only has got to work, but it's got to be different and new. It provides you with a new look, a new way of looking at something. And underwater, you can't change film. You can't change lenses. You have to have a pile of stuff. For me to do the same job a surface photographer does on land, underwater, when a surface photographer goes along and they have some lenses, they have some film, they're going down a strange street in a strange place. They take a lens, they change the lens, they take a roll of film, they do that. To shoot 6 rolls, they have to have 6 cameras. And each one of them has to have a different lens. And each camera has to have 2 or 3 strobes attached to it. So that's like a mountain of stuff to go off and take a picture of a shrimp, or a shark, or a shrimp and a shark. And of course, everything has to be lit underwater. It's a blue or green, strange world. And it needs that bottle of sunlight. And when you do that, it restores colors that are never seen in the real world. And that's what makes underwater photography a challenge.
Mesmo para um veterano como Dubillet, alguns trabalhos trazem uma emoção especial.
A meeting in the sea is a terribly rare thing. For a human to come face to face with any creature is a wondrous experience. And of all the creatures in the sea, stingrays are the most bizarre. To be surrounded by these creatures is not only rare, it's absolutely extraordinary.
Os encontros inesquecíveis de Dubillet com a vida selvagem e as fotografias resultantes compensam totalmente seu trabalho e sacrifícios. Mas ele não se esquece dos leitores. Eles também precisam ser informados, transportados por suas experiências.
I want somebody who looks at one of my pictures to cross that barrier of the printed page and then go into the sea.
Become basically one with the ocean, as it were, as corny as it sounds. But if they can sort of let themselves go and rattle around in the frame of the picture and feel the ocean, then it's a successful picture.
A imersão total no mundo selvagem é muito mais fácil em terra seca do que sob a água. Morando perto do Parque Nacional Chobe, em Botsuana, Beverly Joubert e seu marido Derek têm o tempo que precisam para registrar imagens premiadas da história natural. Para Beverly, as oportunidades para fotografia são praticamente ilimitadas.
I have to totally engulf myself in the subject. And living out in the bush, I obviously have the advantage of a lot of time. I can sit and wait for many hours. And if nothing happens, I don't have the nagging urge of being totally frustrated that I haven't got a shot. We see and learn something different daily out in the bush. It's amazing. And if only I could capture everything that I see, I think I'd have the most unusual African wildlife photography in the world. But it's normally, you know, you get one great shot in a couple of weeks, and that's really rewarding.
As recompensas de Beverly, as raras grandes fotos, dependem do conhecimento profundo que ela adquiriu durante 20 anos de vida na selva.
The most important thing is to become a part of the wilderness. Daily, we're out there, we're experiencing and having great thrills and interacting with the animals. We become an animal. I become animalistic. I stalk an animal to be able to get that shot. The one thing I do is I stalk an animal with a camera. So I don't have any means of aggression at all. And I actually think that animals do pick that up a lot of the time.
I hope the lions don't spot this one because there are not that many around.
Obviously, it's much harder living in the bush than living in a city. There are a lot of things you have to do, like draw your own water. You can't just turn on a tap and have hot, you know, flowing water. There's an incredible calmness in the bush, and you actually become sort of one with what is happening around you, and your spirit feels, you know, just so great that I don't think I could ever live comfortably in a city.
Quando o sol se põe, a vida na selva deixa de ser calma quando os leões começam a caçar. Fotografar este drama noturno é um dos grandes desafios de Beverly Joubert.
You have to habituate the animals so that your presence is not a bother to them at all, and then they will carry on doing whatever they normally would be doing, and especially at night time when we're working with them. Obviously lights could be a bother, but we slowly habituated the lions to the lights, and they got so used to it that that they wouldn't even turn their heads.
Mesmo que os leões aceitem a presença dos Joubert, registrar uma matança em filme não é fácil. Requer paciência, persistência e uma grande dose de sorte.
We have one lioness in front of us, and she's going into a low stalk. We've got one on the left, and the rest are coming in directly with us.
Okay, it's going to break up there. Okay, let's go then.
Okay, Derek, there's a female running. She's running on the right. You better run quickly. There she's going in. She's got the zebra quickly. There's a male. The male's going in. He's on the neck. Okay, we're almost there. I'm going to put the big spot on.
Enquanto esta cena primitiva ocorre à sua frente, Beverly precisa ter presença de espírito para manter em equilíbrio sua luz, suas câmeras e suas emoções.
To watch the lions, it took me a long time to accept what they were doing. But when you're behind a camera, you kind of forget all emotions around you, and you just home into exactly what is happening in front of you. And And you capture that moment and hopefully freeze it in time.
Para Beverly Joubert, congelar um momento em filme é a essência da fotografia, mas seu sucesso depende de encontrar o momento certo.
Take, for instance, the lion catching the baby elephant. I'd seen that 3 times in 15 years in Botswana, and never was I, able to capture it before. And then 2 years ago, it happened in front of us. I put my finger on the shutter, and I knew instantly that I got a great shot because I knew it had never been seen before. It was totally unusual, and I just felt that everything had worked out well.
Cada fotografia conta uma história, e todo fotógrafo tem uma história favorita sobre uma fotografia.
In New Guinea, I swam into this huge school of barracudas. And they began to circle me like a big silver wall coming around like that. And I'm in the middle, and I'm shooting pictures of barracudas. And I'm saying to myself, I am the picture. The picture is me in the middle of these barracudas or someone else. I swam back to the dive boat, and I got the captain, Dinah Halstead. I said, you got to come with me. She says, I got 6 other guests I'm cooking. I said, you got to come. So we jumped in the water. We swam back to the barracudas. They were still there. Enormous school, 1,000 barracudas. And we swam into it, and then they began to circle Dinah. And I dove to the bottom, and I said, this is it. This is the picture. And I turned around, I looked up, and there were the barracudas perfectly circling her. And I went once and twice. She held out her hand like a ballet dancer. And then they were gone. And that was the picture. I shot the whole roll, and I said, we got it.
The idea of every picture telling a story, I've always believed that. Like that picture of Jane with the chimp hand. I saw it happening, and I didn't know if I could capture it. I looked over my shoulder, and Jane was offering her head to a chimp that would really actually be threatening to kill her because she studied mother-infant behavior so long. She knew exactly how to disarm him with body language. So she was able to offer him her head like that without danger. I'm seeing this out of the corner of my eye, and I started walking and trying to clean up the frame while I'm walking. So when I first put the camera to my eye, there were all kinds of disturbing things that didn't make it a magic moment. And I'm just talking to myself, please, 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 and clicking, because you got to keep shooting it just in case it goes away. And there it was for, I think, 2 frames, but only one that's like that. And then I just, whew.
A missão da National Geographic é dar a seus leitores uma janela para o mundo, apresentando a eles terras e povos que dificilmente visitarão. Entretanto, os fotógrafos precisam trabalhar em lugares onde estrangeiros não são bem-vindos.
I personally like to do the photography of closed worlds, hidden worlds, societies of people that you normally don't get in to see, like the women of Saudi Arabia. Probably 99% of the women I asked to photograph said no. The situation there is that they had to get permission from their father or their husband or some male guardian. And the punishment for these women to have been photographed and have had their picture appear in a magazine like this is quite something that we in the Western world don't really understand. They could be banished from their families, they could be divorced from their husbands, they could lose their passports, and their ability to leave the kingdom or to travel, just because of this perceived taboo against being photographed.
Bill Allard também se especializou em divulgar culturas obscuras, tanto no país como no exterior. Ao longo dos anos, ele ofereceu aos leitores imagens íntimas de grupos religiosos como os Amish, solitários independentes como os cowboys, e até o mundo fechado das equipes de beisebol da segunda divisão. No estado brasileiro de Rondônia, Allard entrou em outra comunidade escondida. Aqui, à margem da civilização, trabalhadores empobrecidos derrubam a floresta tropical numa busca desesperada por uma vida melhor. Mas isso é mais que uma história de uma destruição ambiental. É uma história trágica sobre pessoas.
A lot of these people have farmed elsewhere, but they were crowded out by big money, by corporations, big farm operations, and driven in the direction of Rondônia, where they're able to start again with their own land. I'm fortunate enough when I work for Geographic that they kind of turn me loose. So I can wander down the road and I can respond to the area, to the region, and to the people.
Para chegar ao âmago de uma história, um fotógrafo às vezes precisa invadir a privacidade das pessoas, e isto pode criar um dilema ético.
I'm going in here now, and I'm going to, I've been taking pictures here for 10 minutes. They've never met me before in their lives, and we just kind of descend upon them, and we're intruders. We're always taking, and the best you can do, I think, my feeling is, because it's undeniable that we are intruding, so I think we have to try to do the best we can to make that intrusion worth some merit to them.
Às vezes, o fotógrafo é capaz de dar algo em retribuição. Para Allard, esta chance surgiu após fotografar um jovem pastor no Peru.
Wandering along the road, as I like to do, and came upon this boy, and he was just sobbing, all broken up in tears. And some driver had come down the road and just kind of smashed through his band of a dozen sheep, killing about half of them. And that band of sheep represented his family's economy, and he was responsible. So here is Eduardo with half his family's economy dead down in a gulch. So they ran the picture. But what I didn't expect and what happened was that people, readers, classrooms of children all over the country, and I think some probably from outside the country, responded to that photograph with great generosity and sent in eventually, I think, $7,000, $8,000, something like that. And the international organization CARE found the boy, and they had a big celebration in which they replaced the boy's sheep, and then the rest of the money supposedly went into a fund for Peruvian school children. Here was a situation in which a picture I made an actual difference in someone's life. In this case, I was no longer guilty of that, taking and not giving.
Embora seu trabalho seja apenas documentar a realidade, os fotógrafos não podem evitar de reagir às dificuldades das vidas de seus modelos. Isso parece especialmente verdadeiro na África, um continente que sofreu séculos de exploração, mas que continua a inspirar e a desafiar. Bob Caputo vem cobrindo a África há mais de 2 décadas, viajando de costa a costa, obtendo uma visão notável de seus povos e suas culturas. Para Caputo, as barreiras culturais devem ser quebradas, e sua câmera é um dos meios de se fazer isso. Mas algumas histórias são quase dolorosas demais para se fotografar. Em 1992, ele cobriu a fome que se alastrava pela Somália, Sudão e outros países da África. Desta vez, ele lutou para manter alguma distância.
The danger in having a camera here in front of your face between you and the subjects is that it becomes a shield, and sometimes it's necessary, especially in a situation like the Horn of Africa, because the things that you're making photographs of are so horrifying and so depressing. And I found in several situations that there came a time when I couldn't do it anymore. I just had to put down the camera. I was too overcome by the emotion and the tragedy. I feel like if I'd been able to keep doing my job and keep making photographs when I felt that way, then you stop being human.
Caputo registrou as alegrias e as tristezas do povo africano, e eles lhe proporcionaram mais lembranças boas do que ruins.
Invariably, everywhere I go, people are incredibly generous and hospitable and welcoming. And I've never felt out of place, and I feel a real responsibility to convey accurately their lives. There are all these millions of people who look at National Geographic magazine, and often, especially in the kinds of places that I go to, this may be the only information they get about this place. So I have a real responsibility to try to be accurate and thoughtful and honest about it.
Says, boy, you really work hard. I don't consider it working hard because I love it. The hardest part of my profession is if for some reason I can't do it. If I can't work, that's hard.
I think we really live in a global world now, and for me, that's the Geographic's function, is to keep telling the story of the rest of the world to people, but also in my photographs particularly, I would like for people to get an understanding and appreciation for other people in the world.
I feel that I've been incredibly fortunate to be able to go to all these places, meet all these incredible people as a sort of emissary and an intermediary to bring that stuff back for people here. But on a personal level, I've been really lucky to have been able to live like this.
One of the things that photography has special to offer is it's a slice. It's just a little moment at a time, and you capture it in the box. And then you put it on the page. And you can look at it for a long time. It never goes away. The elephant just keeps charging. But that was only at 2/50th of a second back in the swamp. But now it's going to live forever. That's pretty neat.